Cartel violence in Mexico has escalated drastically in the 21st century, constituting a formidable challenge to societal stability and security. With origins in illicit drug trafficking, the cartels have expanded their criminal portfolio, leading to a surge in violence. This grim scenario is personified by notorious groups like CJNG and La Familia Michoacana, whose rivalry has deepened the crisis. Emergence of the Cartels, CJNG and La Familia Michoacana. The emergence of powerful cartels, particularly CJNG, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, and La Familia Michoacana, dramatically altered Mexico's security landscape. Their rise is intertwined with the complex dynamics of Mexico's political, socio-economic, and cultural conditions, necessitating a nuanced understanding of their formation, operations, and influence. The CJNG, originally a wing of the Sinaloa cartel, emerged as an independent entity in 2010. Following the death of the Sinaloa cartel leader, Ignacio Coronel Villarreal, a power vacuum surfaced that facilitated the CJNG's rise to prominence. Under the ruthless leadership of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, aka El Mencho, CJNG evolved into one of Mexico's most dangerous cartels. Its operations encompass a wide range of criminal activities beyond drug trafficking, including kidnapping, extortion, and murder, rendering it a multifaceted threat to Mexico's stability. In contrast, La Familia Michoacana cartel had its roots in the socio-political unrest of Michoacán. Originating as a vigilante group in the 1980s, it evolved into a cartel under the auspices of Nazario Moreno Gonzalez, who gave it a quasi-religious facade. The cartel purported to protect local communities while engaging in illicit drug trade, extortion, and kidnapping. Despite the moral facade, the cartel was notorious for its brutal enforcement methods and is known to have committed numerous atrocities. The rivalry between these two cartels intensified Mexico's cartel violence. Their battle for dominance involves a gruesome cycle of retaliatory killings, mass disappearances, and forced displacement of civilians. The states of Jalisco and Michoacán, the home territories of CJNG and La Familia Michoacana respectively, have been especially marred by this rivalry. CJNG's extensive international connections, stretching from South America to Asia, have further propelled its growth. Meanwhile, La Familia Michoacana's pseudo-religious narrative and local community engagements have deepened its roots in Michoacán, complicating efforts to dismantle it. Understanding the rise and operation of these cartels provides crucial insight into the convoluted situation in Mexico. The influence they wield extends far beyond mere criminality, penetrating deep into the political and social fabric of Mexico. The grim reality of cartel violence in Mexico is emblematic of a broader problem, the systemic issues that facilitate their existence. Thus, addressing this issue requires a holistic approach, one that goes beyond law enforcement and military responses. The brutal feud, CJNG versus La Familia Michoacana. The cartel landscape in Mexico is defined by violent disputes over territories and trafficking routes, with the conflict between the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, and La Familia Michoacana, illustrating the brutality of these confrontations. This feud, characterized by unprecedented savagery and scope, epitomizes the grim reality of Mexico's cartel wars, with profound implications for the nation's security and stability. The origins of the feud can be traced back to the fragmentation of the La Familia Michoacana in the early 2010s. This fracturing, precipitated by internal strife and pressure from security forces, resulted in the formation of several offshoots, one of which eventually evolved into the CJNG. The nascent CJNG, under the leadership of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho, embarked on a rapid expansion, sparking violent confrontations with established cartels, including its progenitor, La Familia Michoacana. The dispute intensified as the CJNG asserted its dominance over key drug trafficking corridors and sought to eliminate competitors. La Familia Michoacana, despite its fracturing, remained a formidable adversary, leading to a series of bloody encounters that painted a horrific tableau of Mexico's cartel violence. Key to this conflict was the fight for control of Michoacán, a strategic state for drug trafficking due to its coastline and proximity to Mexico City. The region's rich agricultural economy, particularly the lucrative avocado industry, provided additional incentive for territorial control. This battle for Michoacan turned the state into a war zone, with civilians caught in the crossfire of the cartel's ruthless ambition. The tactics employed by both cartels exemplified the extreme violence of Mexico's cartel wars. Brutal executions, public displays of victims, and the use of high-powered weapons became hallmarks of their conflict. The CJNG, in particular, gained notoriety for its paramilitary-like operations, showcasing its firepower in confrontations with security forces and rival cartels. In contrast, La Familia Michoacana, once known for its pseudo-religious ideology, sunk deeper into wanton violence as it struggled to maintain its relevance. The feud between the CJNG and La Familia Michoacana also demonstrated the complex relationship between cartels and local communities. Both cartels invested in cultivating local support through a mix of coercion, propaganda, and provision of public goods. The CJNG, for instance, portrayed itself as a protector against rival cartels and corrupt authorities. Meanwhile, La Familia Michoacana invoked a sense of regional identity and employed a moralistic discourse to justify its violent actions. However, these narratives masked the true costs of their presence: the fear, the violence, and the erosion of social fabric. The escalation of this feud exposed the limitations of Mexico's security policy, which struggled to contain the violence and protect vulnerable communities. The extensive corruption and intimidation tactics employed by the cartels further undermined the state's ability to respond effectively, allowing the conflict to persist. Rise and fall of El Vago, the heir to a cartel. Understanding the world of Mexican drug cartels is incomplete without examining the captivating stories of their leaders. One such narrative is that of El Vago, an alias translating to the Wanderer. The turbulent life of this man, born Diego Rodriguez, the heir to a prominent cartel, is an illustration of the brutal cycle of power, corruption, and violence plaguing Mexico. Diego Rodriguez was born into a world steeped in violence and crime, the son of a feared cartel boss. His father, Antonio Rodriguez, led the powerful Los Zetas cartel, known for its ruthless tactics and territorial ambitions. From an early age, Diego was groomed to be his father's successor, raised amidst a bizarre mixture of opulence, violence, and cold-blooded business acumen. In his late teens, Diego adopted the moniker El Vago, a reflection of his nomadic lifestyle necessitated by the constant threat of law enforcement and rival cartels. Over time, he became a significant figure within Los Zetas, known for his strategic acumen, volatile temperament, and ruthless drive to expand the cartel's power. El Vago's ascent was marked by a trail of blood and fear. His reputation grew, but so too did his list of enemies. Diego's aggressive expansionist strategies led to numerous conflicts with rival cartels, notably the CJNG and La Familia Michoacana, exacerbating the cycle of violence. Ironically, El Vago's fall was precipitated by his meteoric rise. His audacious actions drew the attention of the Mexican government and international agencies. In a joint operation by the DEA and Mexico's Navy in 2022, El Vago was apprehended, marking a significant blow to Los Zetas. His arrest triggered a power struggle within Los Zetas. The vacuum left by El Vago's capture precipitated infighting among the top echelons of the cartel. This internal strife, coupled with external pressure from law enforcement and rival cartels, resulted in a steady decline in the cartel's influence and territorial control. Yet El Vago's legacy lives on, embodying the grim reality of the narco culture. His rise and fall offer an inside view of the operational dynamics of a cartel, the intricate interplay of power, money, and violence. Moreover, his story sheds light on the generational nature of cartel involvement and the perpetual cycle of violence that ensues. It's a cycle fueled by socioeconomic conditions, systemic corruption, and a culture that at times idolizes narco leaders. El Vago's story also serves as a stark reminder of the complexity of the fight against drug cartels. The downfall of a single leader, while a tactical success, does not equate to the dismantling of the organization. Cartels often demonstrate a Hydra-like resilience, where the removal of one head often leads to the rise of another, potentially even more violent and ambitious. In the end, the rise and fall of El Vago symbolize the entrenchment of the cartel phenomenon in Mexico. His life, marked by violence and power, mirrors the journey of many others, caught in a vicious cycle from which escape seems nearly impossible. Understanding these personal narratives is a crucial step toward comprehending the broader landscape of cartel violence in Mexico. The price of violence, consequences of cartel wars. Cartel violence has been a persistent issue for Mexico, taking a toll on the nation in ways that reach far beyond the immediate casualties. This chapter unpacks the broader implications of cartel wars, demonstrating that their ripple effects extend across social, economic, and political spheres. In the social realm, one of the most tangible consequences of cartel violence is the human cost. Thousands of lives have been lost or forever altered due to the brutal territorial battles fought by the cartels. Forced disappearances, extortion, kidnapping, and gruesome public executions have become tragically common. This endemic violence breeds fear and uncertainty, undermining social fabric and creating communities where trust in institutions and amongst neighbors is eroded. Moreover, the narco culture glorifies cartel life, enticing young individuals into a world of crime. It offers a false promise of wealth and respect, leaving a generation caught in a cycle of violence. At the same time, the brutal realities of this lifestyle have resulted in a growing number of internally displaced persons within Mexico as families flee their homes to escape the violence. The economic implications are also significant. While the drug trade pumps billions of dollars into the economy, it is a double-edged sword. The informal, illegal nature of this income means it does little to support the broader economy or social programs. It fuels income inequality, with wealth concentrated in the hands of a few cartel bosses while many Mexicans remain impoverished. Further, the prevalence of violence deters both domestic and foreign investment, hampering economic growth. It increases business costs due to the need for security measures and protection money. Tourism, a significant source of revenue for Mexico, has also suffered as potential visitors are deterred by the threat of violence. Politically, cartel violence exacerbates corruption, eroding the public's trust in the government. Cartels often infiltrate local and national politics, using bribery or intimidation to secure officials' loyalty. This systemic corruption undermines democratic processes and hinders the effective implementation of law and order. It fuels a vicious cycle where the government's inability to curb violence further damages its credibility, allowing cartels to tighten their grip on power. Cartel violence also strains Mexico's relations with other countries. It poses security concerns for neighboring countries, particularly the United States, which grapples with drug trafficking across the border. Moreover, the image of Mexico being unsafe impacts diplomatic relations, trade, and tourism. Lastly, the environmental toll of cartel activities is often overlooked. Illegal logging, mining, and the destruction caused by poppy and marijuana cultivation in protected lands contribute to environmental degradation and biodiversity loss. In conclusion, the consequences of cartel violence are far-reaching and complex. The social, economic, political, and environmental implications extend well beyond the immediate sphere of the cartels themselves. As such, solutions must also be multidimensional, addressing the root causes of cartel violence, including poverty, corruption, and demand for illegal drugs. The price of violence is high, and the path to peace requires acknowledging and confronting this complexity. Monopolizing crime, the iron grip of CJNG. The growth and dominance of the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación (CJNG) has been marked by an unprecedented scale of violence and criminality in Mexico. This chapter delves into the rise of CJNG, their tactics, and the resulting impact on the Mexican society. Formed from the remnants of the Milenio Cartel, CJNG emerged around 2010 under the leadership of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho. Starting as a small gang, the cartel quickly rose through the ranks, capitalizing on the power vacuum created by the Mexican government's crackdown on larger cartels. CJNG's rise is underpinned by its ruthless approach to territorial control and expansion. Its members employ brutal violence to assert dominance, unseating rival groups and instilling fear within local communities. Mass killings, public hangings, and beheadings have become their hallmark, a grim testament to their capacity for brutality. However, it is not just their violence that sets CJNG apart. Their extensive criminal portfolio, which extends beyond drug trafficking to fuel theft, extortion, human trafficking, and illegal mining, has diversified their income streams and entrenched their influence. Coupled with a sophisticated organizational structure akin to multinational corporations, CJNG has achieved unprecedented reach and resilience. The cartel's economic model has also played a significant role in their dominance. They have invested heavily in local communities, providing employment and services in areas neglected by the government. This strategy garners them public support, shielding them from law enforcement and facilitating their operations. CJNG's monopoly over crime has not been without serious repercussions for Mexico. Their aggressive expansion has fueled violent clashes with rival cartels, increasing the death toll and displacement rates. The violence has spilled into urban centers, shattering the illusion of safety once associated with these areas. Economically, the cartel's activities distort local economies and deter investment, hindering development. Their involvement in industries such as mining and fuel has consequences for legitimate businesses, as it breeds an environment of unfair competition and market instability. Politically, the rise of CJNG has challenged the Mexican state's monopoly on the use of force. Their ability to confront security forces openly and violently erodes the state's authority and legitimacy. They infiltrate and corrupt political institutions, further undermining the state's capacity to respond effectively. The iron grip of CJNG on Mexico's criminal underworld poses a grave threat to the nation's stability. It underscores the limitations of reactive strategies in combating organized crime and highlights the need for more comprehensive, proactive approaches. Tackling this issue demands more than just dismantling the cartels. It requires addressing the socio-economic conditions that allow them to thrive. Unveiling Hypocrisy, the false narrative of CJNG. The Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, CJNG, presents itself as a necessary evil, defenders of the common people against other malicious criminal organizations and corrupt government officials. However, this chapter aims to dispel this false narrative and expose the true nature of the cartel's operations, illustrating how their actions stand in stark contradiction to the facade they maintain. The image CJNG projects as a protector of the populace is a strategic ruse, a calculated attempt to win public favor and veil their criminal activities. They often invest in infrastructure and public services in communities where they operate, thereby manipulating the perception of their activities. However, the reality is that these benefactions are funded by the immense suffering brought about by their violent criminal pursuits. Contrary to their claims of defending the common people, the cartel's violent practices bring unprecedented havoc to the very communities they purport to protect. Their brutal campaigns for territorial dominance have led to soaring levels of violence, death, and displacement. Far from shielding the innocent, their actions have terrorized entire towns and cities, leading to a state of chronic insecurity. The cartel's economic practices similarly lay bare their hypocrisy. While they claim to bolster local economies through job creation, their involvement in industries such as fuel theft and illegal mining has a damaging ripple effect on local and national economies. They create a climate of fear and instability that deters legitimate business and investment, and their illegal operations undercut lawful enterprises, distorting market dynamics. Moreover, the cartel's narrative of fighting corruption is grossly misleading. While they position themselves as opponents of corrupt officials, they actively participate in and further the corruption cycle. They infiltrate political and law enforcement institutions, leveraging their resources to bribe, intimidate, and influence officials. In effect, they contribute to the very problem they profess to combat, undermining the rule of law and impeding efforts to establish order and justice. CJNG's false narrative also extends to their recruitment practices. They lure disenfranchised youth with promises of employment and protection, exploiting their vulnerabilities for their gain. Yet the recruits are often the first to suffer the consequences of the cartel's actions, facing incarceration, death, or a life of perpetual violence. In essence, CJNG's facade of benevolence is a deliberate smokescreen to mask their ruthless criminality. Their manipulation of public sentiment and the corruption of public institutions not only further their criminal agenda, but also undermine the state's authority and legitimacy. Unmasking this duplicity is crucial to countering their influence and bringing them to justice. The high cost of avocado, extortions, and cartel influence. Mexico's verdant state of Michoacán is synonymous with the lush green avocados that have grown to become a significant export and the lifeblood of the local economy. However, beneath the surface of this lucrative trade lies a sinister reality: the grip of organized crime that has turned the region's green gold into a currency of fear and violence. This chapter explores the intimate relationship between the avocado industry and cartel extortions, illustrating the true cost of this popular fruit. To comprehend the entwinement of cartels with avocado farming, it's crucial to understand the economic significance of this crop. Mexico produces more avocados than any other country, and Michoacán is the heart of this production, responsible for over 80% of the national output. This fruit's popularity, particularly in the United States, has brought substantial wealth to the region. Unfortunately, it has also attracted the predatory gaze of Mexico's criminal cartels. The cartels recognized the economic power of the avocado long before it reached its current global popularity. As demand surged, so did the prices, and the cartels began to extort avocado farmers, imposing a tax on their crop's production and distribution. This guacamole tax is a heavy burden on farmers, siphoning their hard-earned profits and casting a shadow of fear over their livelihoods. The grip of the cartels on the avocado industry extends far beyond extortions. They have moved to control entire supply chains, from production to distribution, ensuring a steady stream of revenue. This control is enforced through violence and intimidation, with farmers who refuse to comply facing grim consequences. In some cases, cartels have also seized avocado farms, driving farmers from their land and leading to a chilling climate of fear and uncertainty. In response to this crisis, some farmers have resorted to forming self-defense groups, taking up arms to protect their land and their livelihood. This vigilante justice reflects a desperate reality: the inability of the state to provide security and maintain the rule of law. In the vacuum left by weak governance and corrupt law enforcement, these self-defense groups have become a necessity for survival. Furthermore, the ripple effects of this cartel influence extend beyond the region's farms and orchards. The influx of cartel money has warped local economies, inflating prices and causing economic instability. More so, the violence associated with the avocado trade threatens the region's social fabric, leaving communities traumatized and torn apart. Moreover, the avocado industry's environmental toll is magnified by cartel involvement. The allure of profits has led to extensive deforestation, as forests are razed to make way for avocado plantations. Cartels, in their relentless pursuit of profits, disregard environmental regulations, exacerbating this unsustainable trend. The cycle of violence, legacy of the cartels. Mexico's struggle with cartel violence is not just a contemporary crisis, but a generational issue that has left a lasting imprint on the nation's psyche. This legacy of violence, characterized by a seemingly endless cycle of bloodshed and corruption, has shaped Mexico's social, economic, and political landscapes. In this chapter, we explore this cycle of violence, delving into its historical roots, contemporary manifestations, and potential future repercussions. Mexico's experience with organized crime dates back to the early 20th century, when smuggling routes established during the Prohibition era in the United States became the groundwork for modern-day cartels. However, the scale and intensity of violence escalated dramatically in the late 20th and early 21st century, coinciding with shifts in drug trafficking patterns and Mexico's political transformation. This period marked the rise of powerful cartels like CJNG and La Familia Michoacana, notorious for their ruthlessness and influence. This cycle of violence has a profound social impact. It creates an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, penetrating all layers of society. From the terror of extortion suffered by small-scale farmers in Michoacán's avocado orchards to the widespread grief and trauma induced by brutal cartel wars, the psychological and emotional toll of this violence is incalculable. The desensitization to violence, particularly among the youth, fosters a culture where violence is normalized, perpetuating the cycle further. The cartel's legacy of violence also extends to Mexico's economic structure. The profits from illegal activities finance corruption, undermine legitimate businesses, distort local economies, and stymie foreign investments. The cartels, with their wealth and power, often operate as parallel states, imposing taxes and providing services in areas where the state's presence is weak. This economic stranglehold impedicates Mexico's growth potential and hampers efforts to reduce poverty and inequality. Politically, the violence perpetuated by the cartels erodes public trust in institutions. The widespread corruption linked to cartels exacerbates this mistrust, feeding into a vicious cycle of disillusionment and civic disengagement. The inability of successive governments to effectively tackle cartel violence and corruption fuels public frustration, leading to social unrest and political instability. Looking towards the future, the cycle of cartel violence presents a daunting challenge. Breaking this cycle will require a concerted and holistic approach that addresses the root causes and not just the symptoms of this crisis. This includes comprehensive law enforcement reform to tackle corruption and enhance security, economic policies to reduce inequality and provide viable livelihood alternatives, and social programs to rehabilitate victims of violence and reintegrate former cartel members into society. Furthermore, international cooperation is crucial, considering the transnational nature of drug trafficking and related crimes. This collaboration should extend beyond law enforcement to encompass shared responsibilities in drug demand reduction, arms trafficking controls, and money laundering prevention. Finally, confronting the cycle of violence necessitates acknowledging the societal impact of the cartel's legacy. It's not only about reducing the violence statistics, it's also about healing a traumatized society, rebuilding trust in institutions, and fostering a culture of lawfulness.